I got into a fight with someone and ended up in the police station. Uncle Policeman. She seduced my husband. Cheated money and engaged in fraud. Will you take care of it? The young policeman took a look at me, turned around and said to the man who had just entered, Captain Lou. Isn't she the daughter of the boss of the fraud syndicate who almost got married to you overseas? I was stunned and looked at Alexander with red eyes. But I saw him turn away infuriately. His tone cold. I don't know her. I work in a photocopy shop with a salary of 200 yuan. I also have to endure my boss's harassment. He writes me little essays every day. Sends flowers and gifts. Transfers money to me and asks me to give birth to a son for him. I'll leave as soon as I get my salary in 3 days. Unexpectedly, the boss's wife found out, and we got into a fight, and ended up in the police station. Uncle Policeman. She seduced my husband. Cheated money and engaged in fraud. Will you take care of it? The young policeman twitched the corner of his mouth. Big sister. Your husband has admitted that he harassed the little girl first. There are also complete chat records. Don't make trouble. Just sign and you can leave. After the boss's wife signed, she left cursing with the boss. Girl. It's your turn. I got up and went over. The young policeman stared at me for a few seconds and said suspiciously, Have we met before? Before I could speak, he exclaimed, Oh, and excitedly said to the man who had just entered, Captain Lou. Look, isn't she the daughter of the boss of the fraud syndicate who almost got married to you overseas? Lou. Alexander? The person is still the same person. But the temperament is very different. My hand trembled, and I couldn't help but look up and meet his long and narrow peach blossom eyes. Removing the deliberately disguised dissolute and naughty look. The man in front of me wearing a police uniform had stern eyebrows and eyes and an upright air. My eyes suddenly turned red. Lou. I don't know. Alexander turned away infuriately, his tone cold. I turned pale and my throat ached. But it really looks alike. Ryan. What are you talking about? What's Captain Lou's identity? How could he be involved with the daughter of the boss of the fraud syndicate? Who are you insulting? A female police officer suddenly said. Why is it related to insult? Is discipline all forgotten? Alexander interrupted Ryan's words in a deep voice. A 3,000-word self-criticism. Hand it in to me tomorrow morning. After saying that, he turned and left. When I left the police station, I saw the honor roll hanging in the corridor. Alexander. Second-class merit. Awarded multiple excellent titles. First prize in shooting competitions and many other awards. Over the years, I have been to the police station many times and occasionally heard about him. Originally, Alexander was always first in shooting in the city. But after coming back from a mission, he regressed. For a period of time, he couldn't even hold a gun. He practiced day and night but couldn't improve no matter what. Later, I heard that he had changed greatly. His shooting level had reached a superb level. He never missed. He was a legend in the industry. I can probably guess why he has these changes. It was raining outside. I didn't bring an umbrella and directly rushed into the rain. 6 years ago, I met Alexander on such a rainy day. At that time, I had just had a heart surgery. I could have been discharged from the hospital. But my father was worried and insisted on adding another month for me. As soon as I sneaked out, I encountered rain. Even more coincidentally, I saw a group of people fighting. In this place, people often died from fighting. I turned around to leave. But when I caught a glimpse of a pair of naughty eyes, I stopped abruptly. The man was tall and had a casual posture. There was a conspicuous mole on his collarbone. He was stabbed in the abdomen and was seriously injured. But he seemed to feel no pain. His actions were arrogant and fierce. Those people were scared by his desperate fighting style. They threw away their things and ran away. They threw it too far and it landed at my feet. It was a pendant. Just as I was about to bend down, I heard the other party warn coldly, "Don't move." Alexander came over in a few steps, bent down to pick it up, stared at it for a long time and didn't react. I was just passing by. I didn't see anything. As soon as I finished speaking, a shadow fell in front of me. Alexander collapsed. He was unconscious, but the pendant was tightly held in his hand. I called an ambulance and sent him to the hospital. He was seriously injured but woke up quickly. Seeing me dozing off on the chair, a dissolute smile was outlined in his eyes. Among so many people, you are the bravest. Aren't you afraid of getting into trouble? This sounded strange. Tell me, how do you want me to repay you? Before I could speak, he said another sentence. Don't even think about repaying with your body. No. Although you are very handsome, you are too confident. I was silent for 2 seconds. Are all Chinese men so narcissistic? I am in the ward upstairs from you. What happened today was purely an accident. Sorry. Thanks. Don't mention it. I am also Chinese. When fellow countrymen meet, it's right to help each other. Alexander smiled. Meeting Chinese people here may not be all good things. My name is Serafina. What about you? Zhangzhu. At that time, he was not called Alexander. He was called Zhangzhu. 3 after returning home and taking a shower, my boss transferred my salary to me and transferred an extra 20 yuan. My dear Serafina baby, you were frightened today. Don't pay attention to that yellow-faced woman. You are the one I love the most in my heart. Take this 20 yuan and buy some milk tea. You little girls all love to drink it. I received the salary and blocked and deleted him. I couldn't sleep well at night. As my consciousness gradually became clear, I realized that there was really someone making noise. Fakes in. She seduced my husband. Cheated my husband to transfer money to her in the middle of the night. Then she blocked and deleted him as soon as she turned around. You people living on the same floor should watch your men well. Don't let her seduce them. And you don't know. I only found out today, when I went to the police station. Her father turned out to be a fraudster. The one who cuts people's kidneys and engages in telecom fraud in northern Myanmar. For a moment, it seemed to be back to the days when I just returned to the country. My father was arrested. I didn't commit a crime, but because of my special identity. In the first 3 years, my address, workplace and leaving the province had to be reported. From time to time, police officers also came to ask questions and popularize laws. As time passed, the way people around me looked at me gradually changed. Fear, disgust, loathing. I can't remember how many times I moved. I can't remember how many jobs I lost. In the end, I could only do the hardest and least profitable jobs. The landlord kicked me out. The boss's wife stood at the door and smiled triumphantly. Perhaps the smoke from the barbecue stall next to it was too choking. My eyes were extremely sour. I blinked and simply poured the slop bucket towards the boss's wife, accompanied by her pig-like scream. I dragged my luggage and ran away. I found a hotel. It wasn't too far. I planned to walk there. Before I had walked for long, a teenager caught up with me. The son of the photocopy shop owner. I thought, if I had known that waking him up and making him stay away from those little gangsters and go back to school to study hard would make him stick to me, I might as well have directly told his mother and not meddled. I'm sorry. I just found out that my dad is shameless. My mom made things difficult for you. Sister, why don't you live at my place? I really didn't want to have any connection with anyone in his family. Ethan, do you like me? The teenager was stunned for a moment. His face gradually turned red and he scratched his head shyly. You know, I like you too. Really? The teenager was so excited that he didn't even have the patience to finish listening. Really? I like you. Stay away from me. I turned and left. After a while, Ethan caught up again. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't like me now. You will like me in the future. I will never like you in the future either. Feeling that it wasn't cruel enough, I added another sentence. Even if I like your dad, I won't like you. Sure enough. Athan froze. His eyes were like those of an injured deer. The goal was achieved. I left neatly. But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, he caught up again and grabbed my arm. I don't believe you are this kind of person. Otherwise, why would you leave? That's because. Miss Sue? Captain Lou. It's Miss Sue. I turned my head and saw Alexander and his colleagues sitting at a barbecue stall outdoors. They put 2 tables together and a group of people sat around eating barbecue lively. For Alexander sat among the crowd. His long and thick eyelashes covered his eyelids. His emotions couldn't be seen. He didn't look at me either. I had just been to the police station during the day. At night, he saw me with the son of the photocopy shop owner again. Although we didn't do anything, I couldn't help feeling embarrassed. Officer Zhu. It's so late. Miss Sue is moving? Why didn't you call a car? I looked at the corner of a one-person cooking pot exposed in the bag in my hand. Yes. I found a new job and moved to a new place. My car is right next to it. Otherwise. That's enough. Ryan. The female police officer who I met during the day kicked him. Your old problem of being a good person is acting up again. Right? Have you forgotten about being framed last time? You dared to give a ride to anyone. Lillian. Why are you so sarcastic today? Why is it anyone? Captain. Where are you going? Captain? Alexander's eyebrows were stern. The bit of unruly in his bones was brought out. Even his tone was impatient. Buy cigarettes. I really wasn't liked. Nor was I liked by him. 5. I left in a hurry and planned to take an taxi to get rid of Ethan. When waiting by the side of the road, a black Grand G stopped suddenly in front of me. The car window was rolled down, revealing Alexander's handsome profile. I opened my mouth but didn't call out. I had called him Meizu. Called him Lord Zhang. I had also seamlessly switched between brother and husband when I was in a daze and infatuated. I had never called him Alexander. Get in. Looking at Ethan, who was closely following me, I opened the car door and got in. The car drove for a while. I asked him to let me off at the subway entrance ahead. He seemed not to hear and directly drove past. It's past. Do you want to go back and find your little boyfriend? Or are you planning to be his stepmother? So. He had heard my conversation with Su Nyan. Sarafina. Is this how you have lived these years? At my most embarrassing and down and out moment, I thought that I must not let Alexander see me. But things didn't go as expected. When I really met him, it seemed that there was nothing I couldn't let go. I simply gave up. What's wrong with living like this? Finding someone younger or older than me. Being someone's stepmother is not impossible. With my identity, do I have a choice? The car suddenly stopped at a red light. The tires made a sharp sound as they rubbed against the ground. There was no more conversation along the way. The car left the second ring road and drove into an old community. The 2 sides of the community were full of phoenix trees. At this season, they were about to turn yellow but not yet. When the wind blew, they scattered all over the ground. What do you mean? Get out. An uncompromising tone. He had already taken out my luggage from the trunk. I had to follow him. When the security guard in the community saw him, he smiled. I haven't seen you come back for a long time. Girlfriend? My heart missed a beat. Alexander didn't answer his question. He took out a cigarette from his pocket and handed it over. After a simple chat and greeting, he was not as distant and indifferent as when he was with me. He was warm and approachable. He was like this when I knew him before. He was handsome and outstanding. He could pick the stars in the sky and also step on the muddy ground of the world. Either one didn't seem out of place on him. Going upstairs and opening the door, I stood at the door and looked around. The house was old but had been renovated. It was neat and generous. The furniture was also complete. But it could be seen that he didn't live here often. Come in. What on earth do you mean? Alexander sneered. Didn't you say you have no choice? Didn't you say anyone is fine? Is he trying to make me be his mistress? I was embarrassed and ashamed. After a long time, I managed to say, "You will violate discipline." Alexander laughed. Looking casual. "Miss Sue, tell me, what discipline will I violate?" 6. I stayed at Alexander's house. As I guessed, he didn't live here. Just consider it as renting. After hesitating for a long time, I still found his number on the electricity bill in the TV cabinet and sent a message. "Thanks." Perhaps because I changed places. I couldn't sleep. Late at night, memories are evoked. They are always hard to forget. 6 years ago in northern Myanmar, after I was discharged from the hospital, I intentionally or unintentionally asked about Alexander. I learned that he was a resident singer at a bar called Night. He was a bit miserable. He was deceived by a friend and was told it was a high-paying job. Before coming, his salary was 18,000 yuan. After coming, his salary was negative 18,000 yuan. With a good voice, handsome and charming, and good at fighting, he soon became famous at night. A group of girls were crazy about him and discussed in Burmese, "Who on earth is dating such a man? I heard that last week someone offered 300,000 yuan for one night." But they still couldn't succeed. As soon as he looks at me, even through the air, the pregnancy test stick can show 2 lines. The night bar is a mixture of all kinds of people. There are many transactions involving alcohol and sex. The hobbies of people who come here are also peculiar. They don't avoid either men or women. I ordered a drink and sat until the bar closed. He finally came over. "Are you very short of money?" He looked at the untouched drink in front of me and moved it aside. If I wasn't short of money, would I come here? True. I asked again. "Are you doing that kind of work?" "What? Do you want to hire me? Is it possible?" I turned my bag upside down and took out 250 yuan. I asked in a low voice, "Is it enough? This is all I have." He didn't speak anymore. A faint trace of mockery flashed in his eyes. He got up and walked out. I hurriedly chased after him. "I am serious. This place is not good. You should go back to your country quickly. Otherwise, you will be." As soon as I finished speaking, the person in front of me suddenly stopped. Before I could react, my waist tightened. I was held by him and pressed against the wall. Unexpectedly, Alexander suddenly leaned down. As long as he moved a little bit, he could kiss my lips. My heart missed a beat. I was so nervous and panicked that I held my breath. You can't take this? But you still want to buy me back, master." His eyes were crazy and extremely captivating. Later, for a long time, I didn't know where he went. About half a year later, I saw him again. He was following my dad. My dad is a fraudster. He is the biggest fraudster in northern Myanmar. He cheats. He kills people. He trades organs. He is heartless and treats people like pigs. 7. When I woke up the next day, the sun filled the entire countertop. Those past events, like light, gradually withdrew from the balcony as time passed. After having breakfast, I went out to look for a job. It was very unsuccessful. About half a month later, in the afternoon when I returned home, the old lady neighbor I often met stopped me. "Girl, haven't you found a job yet?" I shook my head. "I don't have a high education. Many companies don't want me. Moreover, my hand was injured. I can't do heavy work either. So, do you want to do the job in property management? It's in the neighboring community. I know the person in charge of recruitment there. Can I introduce you? But I haven't done it before. I have no experience. Give it a try. It's not like this is the first time. If it doesn't work, look for another one." I went. The interview result was very smooth. They asked me to start working the next day and become a regular employee after 1 month. That night, I took fruits and milk to thank the old lady. The old lady waved her hand with a smile. "We are neighbors. There's no need to be so polite. Besides, don't you often help me find my cat? After the job matter was settled, I remembered that I hadn't seen Alexander for half a month. Suddenly, I couldn't figure out his thoughts. His words seemed to have some meaning of making me be his mistress. But he never came. After a month, I officially became a regular employee. After I got my salary, I planned to visit my grandma. When going upstairs, I met Lillian. She stared at my action of unlocking the door. It seemed unbelievable. You live in Captain's house? She then looked at my work uniform. You work at NHAI Property Management? No wonder. Explain clearly. Officer Zhang doesn't need to be sarcastic. Lillian paused and turned around. Okay. Then I'll be direct. If you have a heart, stay away from Captain. If you are entangled with him, it will only make him embarrassed. I'm not entangled with him. Yes, you are not entangled with him. But you live in his house and enjoy the job he found for you. There is a sea of blood feud between you two. Is Miss Sim really so love-struck to such an extent? But your dad has killed so many people. Captain Liu is just getting rid of harm for the people. But what about Captain himself? His fiancée died at the hands of your dad. Do you think he will let go? Forgive you and fall in love with you? Back in the room, I was covered in cold sweat. Lillian's words were like magic sounds lingering in my ears and couldn't be dispelled for a long time. It also awakened that terrible memory that I deliberately wanted to forget. 3 years ago, on the day of my marriage to Alexander, the park was raided. The person who was still calling me baby 1 second took out a gun and pointed it at my dad's head the next second. The scene was chaotic. My dad's eyes were red with hatred and he was hysterical. Don't be afraid. Anon. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't committed a crime. They won't do anything to you. Then, he rushed towards Alexander. Everyone thought that he wanted to resist and escape. The bullet hit his thigh. He staggered and knelt on the ground. But in the next second, he firmly held Alexander's hand and with his gun, pulled the trigger. What I saw was red. At this time, an underling named Dong Ji beside my dad secretly sneaked behind his colleague. Dong Ji was extremely ruthless. Without hesitation, I picked up the gun and aimed it at Dong Ji. Faster than my gunshot, Alexander neatly fired a shot, then hit my wrist. I was pressed to the ground by him. He looked down at me condescending and coldly put handcuffs on me. Only then did I realize that he didn't trust me. His shot was out of suspicion that I wanted to kill his colleague when I took the opportunity. I looked at him and my eyes gradually became desperate. Have you never loved me? For the first time, I saw Alexander's indifferent and terrifying eyes. It was just acting. I was escorted back to the country and stayed in the police station for a month. In that month, I only saw Alexander once. He accompanied a middle-aged couple. Why? What did my daughter do wrong? Why did you treat her like that? You didn't even leave her a whole body? You fraudsters. Why don't you all die? It was only a little bit. Only a little bit. She was about to marry a key. They should have been very happy. I looked at the aunt with white hair on her temples. Her eyebrows and eyes overlapped with the girl who was holding my dad's hand a few months ago and asked me to call her little mom. So, she was Alexander's fiancée who was about to get married. I understood why he fired that shot at me. I also understood his hatred towards me. But this entanglement was not up to me to start or end. The next day, I went to the cemetery in the suburbs. The girl in the black and white photo was charming and lovely. I pressed my aching heart and slowly knelt down. The cell-phone rang in due time. It was Alexander's call. I hesitated for a few seconds and answered. The other party's voice was hoarse. Where are you? I came to see Amelia. There was dead silence on the other end of the phone. Time passed slowly as if a century had passed. Alexander spoke again. His tone was several degrees colder and terrifyingly fierce. Don't come here. Alexander came very quickly. It seemed that he was restraining something. His jawline was tense. Liu. Don't come here. He took me away from the cemetery. I had seen the person and said what I needed to say. I obediently followed him. As the car started, I saw that his hand holding the steering wheel was turning green. I will continue to work. As for your house, I won't live there anymore. At most 7 days. When I find a place to live, I will move out. As you wish. 77 time passed quickly. I moved and 3 months passed in a flash. My life gradually got on the right track. I saved some money and went to visit my grandma. When I arrived, she was cooking. When she saw me coming, her cloudy eyes were full of light. Cece is here. Why didn't you call me in advance? I didn't make many dishes. Wait a moment. There is a chicken in the refrigerator. I'll stew it. I put the fruits and supplements on the table. Grandma. Let me do it. No need. No need. You are tired from work. I am not tired. Go and sit on the sofa and watch TV. I couldn't persuade the old lady. I took a handkerchief and wiped the photos hanging on the wall. Grandpa. I came to see you. A long time ago. I found my grandpa and grandma. They had lost their daughter and had been immersed in grief for a long time and couldn't let it go. I originally wanted to recognize them. It could also comfort the old people. But they hated that fraudster to the core. I was afraid that they would hate me because of this. I was even more afraid that the two old people had lived an innocent life all their lives. In the end, because of my appearance, their reputation in their later years would be ruined. So, I created an accidental encounter and borrowed meal money from them. When the two old people heard about my situation, having no parents and coming to this city alone, without saying a word, they led me to their home and had a meal. They had no children or grandchildren. I had no parents or grandparents. We were like two small boats sailing alone on the sea, leaning together for warmth. They treated me extremely well. Unfortunately, Grandpa passed away last year, leaving Grandma alone in the world. Grandma, winter is coming soon. I bought you long underwear. Also, you can't eat soaked fungus overnight. I'll throw it away. Almost following my last syllable, there was a loud noise of a heavy object falling to the ground coming from the kitchen. I hurriedly went in. Grandma was lying on the ground silently. My face changed greatly. My voice was filled with crying. I was so scared that I was covered in cold sweat. Grandma. It was an old problem. But this time it was extremely serious. Although she had been hospitalized, with my meager salary, it couldn't last for a few days. I stood in the crowded hall and felt a deep sense of powerlessness from the bottom of my heart. Serafina? It was Boss Lee from the photocopy shop. His head was wrapped in gauze. I divorced that woman. She didn't agree. We had a fight. In the end, we still got divorced. I just saw you coming out of the inpatient department. What's wrong? Is someone in your family sick? Is it not enough money? In the past, there was still a little bit of pitiful self-esteem. Now even this bit has to be discarded. Boss Lee, I was ignorant before and offended you. Can you lend me some money? Yes. Thanks. But then, we are not related. Why should I lend you money? In this way, I'll invite you to dinner tonight. We can talk while eating. Don't rush to refuse. Think about it first. As adults, I am not unclear about what price I have to pay after having dinner. After hesitating for a long time, I dialed Alexander's phone. Alexander, I want to. Sorry. The other party interrupted me. It was a very gentle girl. Alexander went upstairs. When he comes down, I'll tell him and ask him to call you back. Okay? At the same time, the voice of a middle-aged woman came from the receiver. Sui, your dad and I think that we want you two to get engaged first. What do you think? It was like a heavy hammer, hitting me hard in the heart. He was going to get engaged. I stood for a long time and dialed Boss Lee's phone. 12 before entering the hotel. Alexander called back. I stared at it for a long time. until my eyes were sore. I pressed the hang up button and turned off the phone. When I arrived, the dishes had already been ordered. 100,000. Is it enough? When the boss handed over the card, his rough hand touched the back of my hand. The discomfort and didn't shake it off. I reached out to take the card, but my body was pulled away by a strong force. Alexander's handsome face came into view. You. Why are you here? What do you think? There was unstoppable anger in his eyes. Because he was angry. His jawline was tense and frightening. Where did this come from? Hey. Serafina. You think carefully. If you leave and then come back to me, I really won't want you anymore. I was pulled out by Alexander and put into his black Grand G. The door was slammed shut and locked. Serafina. Haven't you learned your lesson? You're really something. Can you be bought for 100,000? Do you know what this kind of behavior is called? I can. He stopped abruptly, his anger having nowhere to vent. Sorry. I really had no other way. Along the way, a voice told me to simply ask him to borrow money. What's the difference between more debt and less debt? Another voice said. No way. What would Alexander think? What would his fiancée think? When the car drove into the hospital underground garage, I asked in confusion. You also came to the hospital. What's wrong with you? He didn't answer and threw me a card. There are 300. yuan in it. You take it and use it first. 13. I finally accepted Alexander's money and gave him an IOU. During Grandma's hospitalization, Alexander came. Surprisingly, the two of them actually knew each other and were very familiar. You are busy with work. There is no need to come every day. Don't worry. There is nothing going on in the bureau recently. Besides, I have eaten so many meals cooked by you before. It's right to come and see you. It's hard for you to remember. By the way, are you married? Not yet. What about a girlfriend? If you don't have one either, take a look at CC. She is a very nice little girl. Although we are not related by blood, she has been taking care of me and accompanying me. Alexander glanced at me. I felt guilty under his gaze. Even the initial kind deception seemed clumsy, and I couldn't bring it out. Grandma. He has a girlfriend. Really? Grandma was a little disappointed. Then you two should be good. After Grandma got tired and fell asleep, Alexander and I left the ward together. Don't you plan to tell her the truth? I shook my head. It's already very good like this. If she knew, she definitely wouldn't accept my kindness to her so calmly. Moreover, I'm afraid she won't like me. Not necessarily. I didn't pay attention to his words. By the way, are you and your girlfriend going to get married soon? Alexander looked up at me. Did you tell her about lending me money? Alexander glanced at me inexplicably, his expression calm. I don't have a girlfriend. Nor am I getting married. The person who answered the phone that day was my eldest sister-in-law. The one getting engaged is my eldest brother. Serafina. I'm not so powerless that I don't even have the autonomy to lend you a little money. There is no need to report to anyone. I'm not lending it to you for nothing. Don't feel burdened. There was so much information that it took me a while to digest it. I said thanks. Undeniably. Deep in my heart, I was a little happy. Alexander. I'll treat you to a meal. His gaze slowly fell on my wrist and his eyes darkened. Does your hand still hurt badly? Have you seen a doctor? It doesn't hurt much anymore. It's fine. The bullet passed through the tendon. Although the surgery recovered well and not lifting heavy objects didn't affect daily life, it left a root cause. It hurts on rainy days. At first, I could endure it. Later, I started taking painkillers. And then, painkillers didn't work anymore. Sorry. Suddenly, my eyes were sour and a dense pain swept over me. I pretended to be relaxed. It's no big deal. In that situation, I wouldn't do better than you if it were me. I had dinner with him. He sent me to the hospital before going back. Since we met again, It seemed to be the first time that we got along so peacefully. 14 in winter. The old lady left me forever. I couldn't keep my mom before. Now I can't keep grandma either. It seems that everything I can't bear will leave me. On the day grandma was sent away, it snowed. I stood in front of the tombstone and stared at her kind smile in the photo. It's good. They are finally reunited. Now, grandma should see mom. I stood for a very long time. Until the heavy snow stopped. Until the sky cleared and there was a gorgeous sunset in the sky. This time, I really am the only one left. I turned and looked at the man beside me. Alexander. I'm leaving here. Alexander was stunned. There was no light in his dark eyes. When? In a few days. I will repay your money on time every month. After I finished speaking, I added with a smile. I won't default. After a long time, he said okay. But his eyes were always fixed on me. Serafina. His voice was hoarse and his eyes seemed to have 1,000 words. My heart tightened and my fingers curled and uncurled. At this moment, I actually had an impulse to hug him. It's time to go back. I added. Some words. If not said at that time, there will never be a chance to say them again. 15 on the day I left. The weather was fine. I specially went to Alexander's unit. I didn't see him, and didn't let the people in his unit see me either. Parting is the norm. Some roads are to be walked alone. I took the subway to the high-speed rail station. I was a little surprised when I received Lillian's call. Serafina. Come to the hospital now. Captain was injured on a mission, and the situation is not very good. All the blood on my face faded. I hurried to the hospital, found the ward and went in. Alexander's colleagues surrounded him. How is he? My throat was sour and my voice was trembling. I wish I could feel his pain instead. Lillian made way. I went over and met a pair of dark pupils. When the man on the hospital bed saw me, his lips curved. His voice was hoarse. Wife. It seemed to have a trace of grievance. Wife? Alexander held my hand and slowly opened it. Then he threaded his fingers through mine and held them tightly. Why did you come so late? I subconsciously pushed him. Lillian held my arm and shook her head at me. You. What's wrong? Many things and many people I can't remember. But I remember you. Alexander was injured on a mission, and hit his head. When he woke up, he was like this. He forgot those things in northern Myanmar. He forgot that I was the daughter of a fraudster. He only remembered that I was his girlfriend. That's all. That's why Lillian called me Miss Sue. I am Alexander's elder brother, Nathan. As you can see his situation. The doctor said that he will recover after a period of time. But during this period, he can't be stimulated. Now he mistakes you for his girlfriend. It may trouble you to take care of him for a while. As for the expense, I will give you 3 times the market price. I don't want money. When my grandma was in the hospital, he helped me a lot. I am willing to take care of him. 16 Alexander was discharged from the hospital. We lived together in the old community he lent me before. Wu Tong Yuan. In the morning, I accompanied him to do morning exercises. The doctor didn't allow him to do too intense exercise. So we just walked around the park. Around 10 o'clock, we went to buy groceries together. After coming back, we cooked. After having dinner, we would go to the supermarket together. We lived an ordinary and common life. Sometimes I thought greedily. If I wasn't that person's daughter, if I was just an ordinary person among thousands of people, then he and I should be like this now, right? It turns out that the ordinary and trivial daily life of ordinary people is extremely difficult for me. What are you thinking? Alexander didn't know, when he came out of the room and hugged me from behind. My body trembled slightly and my heart beat a little fast. Let go of me first. No. He turned my body around. His broad palm fell on my waist and pressed me to his side. Then he kissed me densely. Don't. You will regret it. No. He picked me up and pressed me on the sofa, being extremely fierce. He forgot. But I didn't. I simply pretended to be pitiful, and looked at him with teary eyes. Alexander. At such times, he would stop. Did I hurt you? I'm sleepy. He sneered. His distinct knuckles stroked my lips from time to time. There was desire in his eyes and he was extremely captivating. One more kiss and I'll let you go back. 17 Alexander's examination results were very good. But his memory still hadn't recovered. I was a little worried. But he still had the mood to joke with me. Tired of me? No. Then you think I'm annoying and don't want to take care of me. I was made angry and laughed by him. I stepped on his foot hard and said word by word, Captain Lou. Don't go too far. He caught up in a few steps and inserted his fingers between mine and held my hand tightly. After walking for a while, we met his high school classmate, Brother Key. It's rare to see you so leisurely. Is this sister-in-law? Just in time. Lao Zhao and Lao Li are here on business trips. They are in the clubhouse ahead. Why don't we go and have a drink? He is not feeling well and can't drink. Is it okay? Then don't drink. Just sit for a while. Shall we go together? Alexander looked at me. His tone was casual but there was a bit of cautiousness for fear of being refused. My heart ached. I won't go. I'm a little tired. Why don't you go? Call me when it's over and I'll come and pick you up. Okay? Sister-in-law doesn't need to be so troublesome. We will send him back, when it's over. We guarantee to return a perfect person to you. Then thank you. Alexander slowly released the hand holding mine. His expression was also a little indifferent. Send me a message when you get home. Okay. After returning home, I sent a message. After a long time, he replied with a simple I put down my phone and tittied up the room. After a while, my phone rang and Alexander's message came. There are many girls. They keep asking me for WeChat. Suddenly, my heart ached. I could see that he wanted me to accompany him. I could also see the probing behind his words. Consciously sinking. Stole and happiness. Taking one more step. I feel like standing on a cliff. Uneasy. I went and met more of his old classmates. And then, one day in the future, when they find out who I am and who my father is, I will become a stain in his life. I don't want to bet even 1 in 10,000. Alexander is a person who lives towards the sun. His name shouldn't be mentioned together with mine. It doesn't matter. Freedom to make friends. I won't be jealous easily. There was no reply from him. In fact, I care extremely much. How could I not care? I care very much. But can a bird and a fish really have an ending? When Alexander came back, it was already 12 o'clock. His classmate had an expression of, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Sister-in-law. We didn't mean to let Brother Key drink. We couldn't stop him. Sorry. It's okay. Thank you for sending him back. I helped Alexander into the house. He sank into the sofa and leaned back. His Adam's apple rolled. Don't you love me? My hand pouring water paused. You're drunk. He sat up straight and grabbed my arms. His eyes were red. Tell me. Say it now. I opened my mouth but didn't say it in the end. His hand slowly dropped. He looked dejected and lonely. My heart ached terribly. As if to tear apart the illusory and fragile warmth of these days. I smiled and asked him. And you? Alexander. Do you love me? At first. There was still a glimmer of light in his peach blossom eyes. His Adam's apple rolled again and again. He was desperate and confused. The light in his eyes gradually dimmed. His eyes were extremely red. He just stared at me stubbornly. My eyes were also red. Do you love me? Jiangzu. He was shocked. It was like a beam of light splitting chaos and shattering a dream. There was a flash of pain clearly in his eyes. After a long time, he lowered his head. His voice was extremely hoarse. You know, I poured a cup of warm water and handed it over. My voice was soft. Drink some hot water. He took it and drank it, the hand holding the cup tight and inch by inch. Sorry. It's okay. I don't blame you. Really. My eyes were red. I gently hugged him. When I was about to pull away from his body, he grabbed my wrist and suddenly pulled me into his arms. Thank you for giving me an unforgettable time. I once greedily thought that if you really lost your memory, we could live like this and live an ordinary life. But I thought of 10,000 reasons to convince myself. None of them worked. You must have thought about it too. Thought of thousands of ways for Alexander and Serafina to be together. But there is no solution. Right? Sorry for making you so tired. Alexander can't love Serafina. Jiangsu can't either. This is where we can only go. A play. Fulfilling a dream. I am very satisfied. As if desperately trying to hold on to something. Alexander's hand holding me tight and inch by inch. Finally. He released it helplessly. His eyes were terrifyingly red. There was a coolness dripping on the back of his hand. I don't know how long it took. He said slowly. Serafina. Move forward. Don't look back. You too. Move forward. Don't look back. 19 on the day I left. Lillian sent me off. She brought me a bouquet of flowers. Sorry. I was narrow-minded before. I apologize to you for my inappropriate words. It's okay. If you need anything in the future, you can call me. Thank you. I took the flowers and turned to leave. Don't you ask about Captain? I shook my head. There's nothing to ask. He always knows what he wants. Goodbye. Officer Zhang. At the moment the plane took off, I looked at the miniature of the city below me, and remembered his handsome appearance on the honor roll in the corridor of the police station. Alexander. You are a person who is going to be a hero. You should be praised and become an example for others. Not just be Azu for me alone. May your future path be bright and splendid. Without me anymore. 20 extra chapter. When I was very young, my mom didn't like me very much. When she escaped, she didn't take me with her. I found out and followed her. Only then did she reluctantly take me with her. Unfortunately, we were still found by that man. Mom could never leave that yard again. Every time that man came, she would get angry, throw things, and even find faults with me. She was very strict with me. No stealing, no lying. There were many prohibitions. But many times, she would gently hold me, teach me to write Chinese characters, teach me the national anthem, teach me to draw, tell me stories, and let me have a kind heart and know good from evil. She would also teach me to solve math problems. But what she taught was completely different from what was taught at school. She also asked someone to get me a completely different set of textbooks for me to learn. She said that one day, we would all go back to China. So, I had to learn Chinese things. She also said that my dad was a bad person. I didn't understand. So I asked, what is a bad person? Is it like Xiao Peng at school who snatched my pencil? My mom's eyes were filled with hatred. No. He makes children like you have no moms. He makes people like moms never see their families again. He also digs out people's hearts and livers. She never hid it from me. So, I knew from a young age that my dad was not a good person. But later, she still couldn't take me back to China. I remember that day. She cooked a meal for me herself. She accompanied me to solve several math problems. She held me and looked out the window. See, Mom really misses Mom and Dad. Then I'll ask that person tomorrow to let us go back and see Grandpa and Grandma. Okay? Okay. At that time, I didn't understand the reluctance and pain in her eyes. Remember what Mom told you. Remember. Grandpa and Grandma live in room 201. Second floor. Unit 1. News Community. Huijiang Road. Grandpa is called Su Jiangwo. Grandma is called Kai Yin-fen. And you can't tell anyone. What else? Be an innocent and good person. Don't take the wrong path. Don't easily believe that person's words. Don't do things for him. Don't harm compatriots. When there is a chance, go back to China. Mom is so tired. I can't hold on anymore. CC. Remember to take mom home in the future. 21 After mom left, I didn't speak for a long time. Gary doted on me extremely. But I didn't like him. There was always a smell of blood on him that made people sick. I want to go home. Back to mom's home. When I grew up a bit, I realized that I couldn't go home. With him around, I couldn't go back. His fraud chain grew bigger and bigger. The women around him changed more and more frequently. There were even those younger than me. Every time, I pretended that they took mom's place and drove them away. I naively thought it was salvation. But what awaited them was the next hell. I couldn't change anything. Until I met Jiangsu. He didn't know me. But I knew him. I recognized his eyebrows and eyes. I recognized the mole on his collarbone. Mom told her that she was once a math teacher. She led a group of naughty children. Among them, there was one named Alexander who was particularly naughty. Skipping classes. Not listening in class. But extremely smart. He always got full marks in math exams. Probably looks like this. Mom's student is excellent. Right? Handsome. My mom smiled and tapped my head. The little girl only thinks about being handsome in her head. He is just very handsome. He is more handsome than anyone I have ever seen. He is handsome. His dream is to be a policeman. Now counting. He should have been admitted to the police academy. Right? Mom. Will he come here one day? Arrest that person. And take us home? Maybe. My mom burned the portrait. No one had seen it except me. So, when I saw Jiangsu standing beside my dad, I understood what he was here for. But new people entering the park are not allowed to go out alone. If Jiangsu wants to send a message out, he has to gain that person's trust. I don't know the price, but it won't be easy. So, for the first time, I stepped into the park. That person was stunned. Then he laughed. That laugh had a somewhat flattered meaning. CC is here. My daughter has come to my company. Notify everyone. There is a holiday tonight. Let the kitchen add more dishes. My daughter is here. So you also know you have a daughter? Then what about those families torn apart by you? I said coldly. I can't keep up with math. I can't do the exercise books that mom bought for me before she died. You get me a tutor. If you can't do it, then don't do it. The school doesn't teach it either. Okay. Okay. Ah dong. Go and ask who is good at math. Bring them over to tutor my daughter in math. Jiangsu plays with computers. His math should be very good. He took a look at Jiangsu and hesitated. I was afraid that he would find someone else. Impatiently, I said, just him. Then I turned and left. 22 Jiangsu was arranged to tutor me in math. 3 hours a day. However, my dad sent people to watch him 24 hours a day. One day, I was doing it halfway. I messed up the draft paper and tore it to pieces. I was extremely irritable. I can't do it. Explain it again. Jiangsu seemed quite helpless. Missy. I have explained it 8 times. He has understood. Have you understood? The little brother nodded. Before he could speak, I yelled at him. Showing off that you can do it? Get lost. Don't be in my sight. The little brother was scared and walked a little farther away. I secretly slipped the bank card pressed under the exercise book to him and said in a low voice, Jiangsu, leave. I know what you are here for. If he finds out, he will throw you into the river to feed the fish. You will be in a very bad situation. There had been people coming before. But unfortunately, none of them succeeded. He was mom's student. I privately didn't want him to have an accident. Jiangsu glanced at the person standing not far away, and gave the card back to me. Be focused. He didn't trust me. 23. After getting along with him for a long time, I gradually found that he was completely different from what Mom said. His temperament was also completely different. How could there be someone who flirts everywhere and doesn't even know it? Moreover, his way is too wild. It seems that he really believed the pie that man drew for him. Becoming a manager next year. Buying a villa. Keeping a woman. Could it be that he didn't become a policeman? Could it be that he has already forgotten his original intention? I planned to ask him if he remembered Mom. But I didn't ask. And I didn't see him come to tutor me in math. I asked someone about the situation. Missy forgot. Today is the monthly day in the park. There are often new people entering the park. So there are often people who escape. Therefore, every month there is a day to punish raiders. The new ones personally kill the escaped people to achieve joint crime. Many people can never leave again. When I arrived, Jiangsu was holding a gun. There was a cigarette in his mouth. The muzzle of the gun was pointed at the man kneeling on the ground. He was extremely bad. I went up without saying a word and slapped him hard. I snatched his gun. Tears fell. Liar. Jiangsu's expression paused slightly. After thinking all night. Haven't you thought of who the woman who winked at you when we went shopping yesterday is? Jiangsu's dark eyes seemed to look into my heart. Suddenly, he curved his lips. Wronged Missy. I don't even know her name. Maybe she saw me at the bar before. He was also extremely jerk. Wait. That person came over. His gaze circled between us. He kicked Jiangsu. Jiangsu didn't dodge. He took a kick and couldn't straighten up for a long time. I ask you to be a tutor. But you are flirting with my daughter? I rushed over and stood in front of Jiangsu. He is handsome and smart. I like him, and want to be with him. What's wrong? Is it illegal? Here I am the law. What's illegal? But... The chaotic scene suddenly became quiet. My dad looked at Jiangsu in disbelief. I answered quickly. What are you looking at him for? I insisted. How dare he not give in? No. Damn it. Call a doctor. Back in the yard. The doctor also came. After seeing it, he said to be moderate. I was drinking water and almost spat it out. Even Jiangsu standing on the side coughed and his earlobes were slightly red. I just stayed up all night. They temporarily passed the test. Because of this, Jiangsu could freely enter the park and stay overnight at my place. But my dad still didn't trust Jiangsu. He wasn't allowed to use his mobile phone and had to report when going to other places. Especially after he suffered successive setbacks and several fraud dens he had entrenched in China were raided one after another. He began to suspect if there was an insider. After Jiangsu came, things went wrong one after another. He was the first one to be suspected. On this day, he came back with a group of people holding guns and knocked on my door. "Enanon, are you asleep?" I got up and stood behind the door. Jiangsu didn't trust me either. He had never told me anything he shouldn't. He asked me if I liked flowers. He would go buy them. I nodded. But until now, he hasn't come back. With such loud knocking, who can sleep? Dad has something to find Jiangsu. Put on your clothes. It's not appropriate. Why is it not appropriate? Be good. It will be quick. I was irritable and panicked. I searched for my mobile phone to send him a message. The one he was using was the mobile phone I secretly slipped to him. I said it's not appropriate. It's just not appropriate. We are both asleep and not dressed. What would it look like if you came in late at night? Is this a problem of not being dressed? Don't you understand? There was silence outside for a while and he compromised. Then fine. You go in and wake him up, and let him come out. Got it. I went back in. Jiangsu didn't know when he came back. He was kneeling on the ground, firmly pressing his abdomen. Between his fingers, blood soaked through. I hurriedly helped him onto the bed. My mind was blank. It was still him who pressed my wrist. His tone was clear. Help me take off my clothes, and throw them on the ground cleanly. Mix them with yours. I understood. Then I stuffed his bloody clothes under the bed. Feeling it wasn't safe enough, I simply stuffed them into my pillow. As soon as I climbed onto the bed, the door banged, and my dad rushed in with people. Jongsu lifted the quilt and covered me, only revealing my eyes. Boss. That person looked around and approached. His hand fell on Jongsu's shoulder, and pressed down inch by inch. His gaze fell on Jongsu's waist covered by the quilt and suddenly reached out. Are you perverted? You still look when people are not dressed. Are you shameless? Jongsu was quite indifferent and leaned back casually. It's okay. We are all men. There is nothing that can't be seen. That person lifted a corner of the quilt. Ah Dong came in. Boss. The person has been found. 25 after making sure they had left. I locked the door and took out the medicine box to bandage Jongsu. The bullet was deeply embedded and the flesh was a bloody mess. My hand was shaking so much that I didn't dare to use the knife for a long time. Afraid? There is no anesthetic. It will be extremely painful. Probably. He smiled and took my hand and pulled it to his side. The knife stabbed in steadily. After taking out the bullet, I came to my senses and disinfected and bandaged him. He was so weak from the pain. Are you okay? He seemed to want to speak but couldn't muster the strength. Out of nowhere, I straightened up and kissed his lips. Jongsu was obviously stunned. When I was sickened uncomfortable as a child, Mom would kiss my forehead. He sneered. Missy, did you kiss my forehead? I thought that kissing the lips would have doubled the effect. I was just making it up. Otherwise, how could I explain my rogue behavior? Fortunately, he fainted from the pain and didn't see my embarrassment. 26 later, some things happened in the park again. But every time Jongsu had an alibi, the more loyal and unwavering he appeared, the more he was suspected. Even he suspected me. He suspected that our relationship as a couple was fate, and sent people to listen at our corner late at night. Haven't tried it. But you must have seen it on TV. Right? Does the kind where kissing leads to pregnancy count? Can you call out? Yes. I let out an ah. Jongsu covered my mouth in time. He seemed a little helpless and his voice was soft. Forget it. How can we forget it? There are still people outside. Just at this moment, there was a softness on my lips. He kissed me, and the kiss deepened gradually. Some things can be learned without a teacher. After the people outside left, I was so ashamed that I hid under the quilt. Thanks. After that, things calmed down for a while. Until that day when that person came back unexpectedly and said he wanted to have a family reunion dinner. In the middle of the meal, he suddenly took out a photo. In the photo, the girl's death was extremely tragic. Even her internal organs were gone. I was physically and psychologically uncomfortable and felt nauseous. That person smoked and his tone was light. This woman is called Amelia. She was with for a while. She was very good in bed. Unfortunately, she was disobedient and wanted to run away. I caught her and sent her to the red light district. Later, her heart was transplanted to Ananon. It's also somewhat valuable. I saw Jongsu's hand under the table clenched into a fist. The veins on the back of his hand bulged. Even his entire aura was completely different. Killing people is like killing their hearts. This move has always been well played by that person. But at that time, I simply thought that Jongsu was so angry just because of the tragic fate of his compatriot. Later I learned that at that moment, he had the intention to kill. Towards me and that person, he quietly listened to his fiancée, his childhood sweetheart, being humiliated like this. But he could do nothing. He just said lightly, "She deserved it." 27 that night, Jongsu asked about Amelia. I told him everything in detail. The first time I saw Amelia was when that person brought her back. Because of my past experiences of saving people but failing every time, I didn't dare anymore. I didn't know what to do to help them. So, I showed my friendliness as much as possible. I asked her to accompany me. At least I could let her live a few peaceful days. Perhaps seeing that I was different from my dad, After we got along for half a month. She knelt down in front of me. Missy, I beg you to let me go. Please let me go. I can't take it anymore. Your dad humiliated me. But I really don't know how to save you. I have tried many times. A glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes. Can you lend me your mobile phone? Okay. She sent a text message and then deleted it. She thanked me. But that night, she was taken away by my dad again. When I saw her again, it was the third day. Her complexion was even worse. I took her out to relax. When we reached the river, she suddenly took out a dagger and pointed it at my neck. Sorry. I really want to go home. I won't hurt you. I just want your dad to let me go back. Put down the knife. You underestimate this place too much. How can you be sure that there are no people sent by your dad at the airport? If you kill me, you won't survive. If you don't kill me, you can't take me away. Before my dad comes, put down the knife. Didn't you say that the person you love will come to save you? You have to trust him. I trust him. But I can't wait anymore. I don't want to stay in this place for even a second. Moreover, with me like this, what face do I have to face him? This is not your fault. He won't blame you. He will only pity you. Amelia. Wasn't last night's lesson enough? Put down the knife. Otherwise, I have 100 ways to make you live a more miserable life than death. As if remembering some terrible experience, the light in Amelia's eyes completely dimmed. As she backed away, she murmured, "Don't go back. Don't. I have no way out." She pulled me and we fell into the river together. I drowned and had a heart attack and was sent to the emergency room. Amelia completely disappeared that night. In the darkness, there was only the sound of breathing between me and Jiangsu. I only found out today that the heart I received was hers. It's a pity that the person she was waiting for didn't come. She deleted the text message. I don't know who she sent the message to. I can't deliver the message. Jiangsu, I really want to leave this place. 27 That person asked me to marry Jiangsu. The location was in the park. On the pretext of preventing chaos, he closed the yard. No one was allowed to enter or leave. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I saw Jiangsu sitting on the steps, smoking one cigarette after another. Coupled with that person's abnormal behavior these days, I guessed that there would be a big movement in the park. Perhaps my and Jiangsu's wedding was just a guise. All this should be coming to an end soon, right? There should be no more intersection between me and him. But I'm so reluctant. I shouldn't have fallen in love. But by the time I realized it, he had already permeated my life and I could never forget him. Sure enough, the wedding didn't go smoothly. But I didn't expect that Jiangsu's shot would hit me. When I was pressed to the ground and handcuffed by him, I was thinking, I was prepared for him not to love me. But I didn't expect that what awaited me was a shot of distrust from him. I just was afraid that something would happen to your colleague. I just wanted to help you. I suddenly remembered the night when I told him about Amelia. In the darkness, his distinct knuckles fell on my chest. At that moment, the way he looked at me was full of hatred. Right? Did he suspect for a moment that I was actually not a good person? But Jiangsu, I really am not bad. I haven't become someone who disappoints mom. I once wanted to tell him that my mom is teacher Zhu who taught you. Very early on, I already knew you. Unfortunately, there will never be a chance to say it. 28 Before Serafina left, she went to the Liu family once. Nathan received her. He was a gentle and refined person. Very polite. "Miss Zhu, have some tea." "Thank you." The Liu family had an extraordinary background. They were a scholarly family. They were a noble family. She felt that even looking up at them was a desecration. "Miss Zhu doesn't need to be so formal. I invited you here just to tell you some things about Alexander before. Does Miss Zhu know Amelia?" Serafina nodded. "I know. They could have been very happy. Alexander and Amelia had an engagement since childhood. But Alexander always regarded Amelia as a younger sister. Without northern Myanmar and being deceived into the park. When it came to love between men and women, Alexander insisted on breaking off the engagement. In a fit of anger, Amelia accepted her best friend's invitation and went abroad. Alexander always felt that he was responsible for Amelia's death. If he hadn't mentioned breaking off the engagement, Amelia wouldn't have gone abroad in a fit of anger. She wouldn't have suffered inhumane treatment. Nor would she have ended up in a tragic death. So when the Public Security Department organized a joint operation to combat crimes in northern Myanmar, he participated and went undercover. Later, after the mission was completed and he returned to the country, he was depressed for a while. He was sick for a month. During the days of high fever, he had nightmares and repeatedly called your name. But after waking up, he didn't mention it at all. He locked himself in the room self-tortuously and didn't eat or drink. I think he is very painful inside. Loving someone he can't love. I know that being born into such a family. Miss Sue is also innocent. But people can't choose their own birth. Miss Sue should know that there is no result between you two. People are selfish. I don't want to see my younger brother make mistakes and ruin his life. What about Miss Sue? I suppressed the soreness in my heart. Alexander has always been very clear about what he wants. He won't be disturbed, and I also have my own path to follow. Many years later, Serafina saw Alexander in a distant small town in the southwest. At that time, she was in a homestay chatting with a young employee girl she had known for 3 years. Sister Serafina, you don't fall in love or get married. The money you earn is either donated to mountainous areas or given to welfare homes. Why is that? To atone for sins. What kind of sin requires a lifetime to atone for? Perhaps a lifetime may not be enough to atone for it. At this moment, a family of 3 came in at the door. At a glance, Serafina recognized Alexander. It was still that face. But he was in a relaxed and happy state. She subconsciously got up and went out through the side door, leaving a sentence. I'm going up the mountain. The store is in your hands for these 2 days. The little girl shouted at her, Sister Serafina, you are going to the mountain to see those children again. Dapped her slowly. Alexander, who was standing in front of the counter, heard the word Serafina, and it was like a long-lasting dream that was evoked at a certain moment. He involuntarily turned his head to look at the side door. He didn't see her full face. He only saw the figure of the girl nimbly getting into the passenger seat. There was no longer the confused and self-deprecating look of a few years ago. The beautiful woman standing beside him asked, What's wrong? Alexander? It seems I saw an old acquaintance. Then you can go over and say hello. I'll just check in. Alexander took back his gaze and took the child from her arms. He smiled softly. No need. It's not easy to take a vacation. I want to spend more time with you and the child. That day, Serafina saw the most beautiful sunset. Alexander, it's really time to say goodbye this time. Mountain birds and fish travel different paths. From now on, mountains and waters will never meet again.